A man is in a room. It's somewhat maze-like and part of a grid of similar rooms, but he's struggling to make it out of the first one. He's not too worried at first, but then alarms begin to sound and warning lights flash. He needs to get out, stat. He spots a doorway below and makes for the staircase on his left, but it's a dead end. He goes the other way where he can jump down from a ledge onto the lower floor, but as he lands, the ground next to him is darkening. It's melting. He's panicking now. He turns away from the door, running back towards the room's center and straight onto another dark patch. The moment he does, the ground beneath him gives way, revealing lava below. He falls. Sapnap has become the first player to ever die in a game of Meltdown. On the 25th of May 2022, MCC players and fans were awaiting an announcement. It was a tradition that had begun a year prior, but gained more importance when the Decision Dome was capped at 9 games per event. It would show which games are available to be played on Saturday, as well as the maps they would be played on. But when the announcement was made, all eyes were drawn to one spot labeled by a single word: Meltdown. For the first time in nearly a year, a brand new game would be appearing in the Decision Dome. With the event's update video still 2 days away, all people could do was speculate about this new game's premise. Very little information was given. The name and icon portrayed nothing but a temperature-based theme, so people looked elsewhere to find context. The other 8 games, notably, had an imbalance. All 5 movement games were present, but there were only 2 team games and just 1 PvP game. The games riding the bench this event further solidified things, with one of them being a team game and the other 2 PvP. Meltdown clearly fell into one of these 2 categories, and the game lineup was suggesting PvP would be the most likely. But something else was pulling in the other direction. MCC was not the Nox Crew's first endeavor in Minecraft, or even Minecraft tournaments. From 2012 to 2015 they held the Nox Crew Game Show, and many of its elements were used as inspiration for the MCC we know and love. For example, the foot race map Python's Crypt was pretty similar in layout to a map from the game show called Python's Crypt. Some MCC fans had also enjoyed the game show back in the day, so part of the community was well aware of this, and for them, the name Meltdown rang a bell. Meltdown was the name of one of the games in the Nox Crew game show. Here's the premise, and tell me if this sounds familiar. A team of players explores a melting reactor filled with mobs and puzzles, collecting diamonds to determine their score. But they are also on a timer, which they have to replenish by collecting buckets of water and placing them in the center of the reactor. If they fail to do so and the timer ticks down to 0, the reactor melts down and the players are locked inside. So Meltdown is Sands of Time all along. We get double the Sands of Time, double the H-Bomb VOD reviews. This is the best day of his life. It's the best day of my life. The best day of all of our lives. Okay, enough of that. Realistically, as much as we would all enjoy it, the Nox Crew aren't just going to add a copy of Sands of Time to the event. No game will ever live in the shadow of another and remain in the lineup. Meltdown is its own game, and the event is better because of that. Yes, Sands of Time has that mystique that no other game does, and to recreate that feeling would be wonderful. But Meltdown, even today, is an enigma in its own right. And back in MCC 22, let's just say it gave Sands of Time a run for its money. Here's why. Meltdown is a PvP game. It joins the likes of BattleBox, survival games, and Sky Battle in this regard, but it's a bit different than the others. Those 3 games use a variety of classic Minecraft weapons: swords, axes, bows, crossbows, harming potions, TNT, etc. They also feature a variety of tools and resources that provide additional utility. Meltdown has none of this, except the bow, but it's not a normal bow. It has infinity, so running out of arrows isn't an issue, but more importantly, it always one-shots. This is absurdly strong. It's the kind of thing a child comes up with to win a playground argument. My gun has infinite ammo and infinite damage. Sometimes a shooter game will have a weapon like this, but it always comes with a massive downside. So how did the Nox Crew ensure that a game featuring only this kind of weapon would be fun and balanced? They created a new item, the heater. Even though the bow is functionally a one-shot kill, it doesn't actually kill. Instead, it freezes the target in place, preventing them from moving or using items. The heater can be placed to thaw frozen teammates within a smaller radius. Importantly, heaters can only be broken by being punched, and all points earned from freezing an opponent are rescinded if they are thawed. This makes Meltdown function kind of like a kill confirmed game, in which a player has to approach a downed opponent to pick up their tag, or in Meltdown's case, break nearby heaters for kill credit. In order to win a fight, then, a team will likely have to push into their enemy's position, since a team isn't eliminated until all living players are frozen and there are no heaters nearby. To prevent teams from simply camping around their heaters to survive, they were given a few limitations. Heaters take a few seconds to thaw players and will eventually break on their own if left out long enough. Once a heater returns to its owner's inventory, it also has a cooldown before it can be placed again. Preemptively placing heaters therefore isn't always the optimal strategy, as doing so limits your ability to reposition yourself mid-fight. Of course, not doing so is risky too, as getting frozen with a heater in hand could be the difference between life and death. These two items make for by far the most unique combat system in MCC, but Meltdown does share a few similarities with the other PvP games. Like survival games and Sky Battle, it's a free-for-all between all 10 teams that sees a border force people to eventually converge to the center. Despite this, it doesn't look or play all that alike. Its battlefield is very unique, composed of a grid of rooms that look more appropriate for a game of hide and seek than a fight. Their high walls make for a game of very little information, with opponents not often encountered until they're well within shooting distance. It evokes a feeling of fear like no other game does. Teams roam the map in isolation, but an opponent could always be right around the corner. And if they are, you're just one shot away from potential elimination. That's already plenty scary on its own, but opposing teams are not the only danger Meltdown has to offer. Just like the one on the old game show, it takes place in a melting reactor. Instead of a classic converging border, the reactor experiences the game's namesake mechanic, the Meltdown. Starting with the outermost rooms and moving toward the center as the round progresses, rooms will begin melting down. The floors will darken and then disintegrate, and any players unfortunate enough to be standing on them will fall into lava. After melting for long enough, the doors will shut and lock any survivors inside, killing them shortly thereafter even if they don't wind up in the lava. Players need to move from room to room in a timely manner to avoid the meltdown, and to help they've been given a third item, the map. The map displays your location and the direction you're facing, as Minecraft maps typically do, but it also shows the status of rooms. Rooms with a light grey fill are safe, rooms with a red fill are melting, and rooms that are fully greyed out are locked. There's also a fourth type of marking, a darker bluish grey with a yellow square inside. This signifies that the room contains a coin cache, which consists of 18 coin crates packed tightly together. There are always 5 rooms that contain a coin cache, and they are always in the same locations: the central room and the 4 rooms diagonally adjacent to it. These are obviously key locations worth fighting over, but they aren't the only places crates can be found. An additional 88 coin crates are distributed across the 26 rooms that do not contain a cache. In order to mine these crates, players are given the telepickaxe, the fourth and final item. It's only capable of mining coin crates, and can only be held by one player on each team at a time. A player can claim the telepickaxe from a teammate, but after doing so there's a cooldown before a teammate can claim it back. Those of you who have watched plenty of Meltdown probably don't pay much mind to this mechanic, as it doesn't seem all that impactful in a game where teams typically stick together. But it's sneakily very sinister. Especially in cashless rooms, where crates are very spread out, it wastes players' time. And as they are going to learn shortly, time is of the essence in Meltdown. It is the top of the hour on this Saturday, May 28th of 2022, and the players have entered the Decision Dome to mark the event's beginning. Meltdown is at the forefront of their minds, but the question still remains: will they play it as soon as they possibly can, or save it for later when the stakes are higher? Meltdown appears as part of the initial 8 games, meaning the choice is in the player's hands, and the arrival of the voting phase sees a lot of votes thrown in its direction. 8 of the 10 teams want to see Meltdown played first. Maybe they're all super excited to play it, or maybe they're just risk-averse. Probably both. Either way, the randomness of the chickens is no match for a voting block this big, and thus Meltdown makes its debut. Before the game begins, let's remember to give the players a bit of slack. This is the first time they've ever played it, or even seen substantial gameplay. Even though they know the rules and the premise, it usually takes a bit of playing time to digest things. They did make things harder on themselves by playing it first, though. They may not be fully in the MCC mindset yet, and they'll likely lack the urgency they would have if it were being played with higher stakes. But we shall not let that prevent us from sharing a laugh at the hijinks of these poor souls, or from learning the lessons that Meltdown taught them, or at least tried to teach. Let's begin with an obvious one. Not all spawns are created equal. Whether any one is better or worse than another is up for debate, and I could probably do a detailed analysis of that, which does sound enticing but would make this video far too long. Regardless, 6 of the 10 spawn locations have an extra room between them and the 5x5 square. These 6 rooms are the first group to begin melting down, which is how Sapnap, whose team spawned here, became the first player to die. But they also have another unique aspect, one that is much more important. They only connect to one other room. If a team that spawned in a corner decided to make a beeline for this doorway, they can pin their neighbors in a soon-to-be melting room for some easy kills. I wonder how quickly it will take for someone to realize this. To begin the first ever round of Meltdown, the Red Rabbits spend all of 7 seconds in the first room, then find themselves fighting with Pink in the doorway by the 20-second mark. I don't even think they intended to door camp, but rather walked through the nearest doorways they saw and found themselves face to face with another team. They certainly aren't fighting like they're trying to camp, leaving themselves very exposed as they run back and forth in front of the doorway. The reckless behavior results in them getting frozen frequently, and a well-organized push by Pink finishes them off for the first full team elimination in Meltdown history. On the other side of the map, Yellow has taken a similar path to Red. They were too slow to catch their opponents at the doorway though, finding them in the center of the room instead. They have a massive advantage here, with their elevated position nearly impossible for Blue to push into. After 2 quick freezes, they jump down to try to convert their advantage, but are too far away to break Blue's heaters in time. They retain the advantage nonetheless, as there's still another ledge between them and Blue. They just have to prevent them from climbing this staircase, which will give access to Yellow's heaters. But they don't, and multiple Blue bats march right up into their position and don't break the heaters. They just place heaters of their own and run back, resulting in their heaters quickly being destroyed. Blue had a great opportunity to seize the initiative with 2 Yellow players frozen, but they never managed to put together a coordinated push. They would be eliminated shortly afterward. Near the end of the fight, the first round of coin caches were unlocked. The caches are a big deal, yielding 180 coins each if all crates are mined. That's nearly a fifth of a team's average score. Teams gravitate toward them for good reason, and they are definitely worth fighting over. So with that said, let's see how the remaining teams are competing for them. All 4 caches are being mined unopposed. The other 6 teams aren't even in the cache rooms at all. Now to be fair, 2 of those teams are dead and another just got out of a battle, but Lime and Orange are just meandering. Orange so much so that when Cyan peeked into the room they were in, they didn't see each other. And then there's Green, who meandered so hard they didn't even make it out of the first room. Foolish and Tina met the same fate as Sapnap shortly after him, but Michael survived long enough to retreat all the way back to his team's spawn. The floor isn't melting there, but his time is limited as he'll eventually die anyway when the room locks down. Michael's first round of Meltdown ends exactly where it started, and he remains the only player to date to have ever done this. In the first minute and a bit of Meltdown, the players have for the most part been playing very cautiously. Teams wanted to stick together in case they encountered another, and some players warned of a potential encounter every time they entered a new room. But as soon as they were presented with uncontested coin crates, all common sense went out the window. The miners requested their teammates to provide cover, which is a good idea, but the way they went about it was not. Instead of huddling together and aiming at choke points or hiding behind walls in third-person view, they spread out and ran around in the open looking for enemies. And remember, there are still 3 teams that have yet to enter these rooms, so as they do, let's see how the strategy works out. We'll start with Cyan, who have a player get frozen before he can even articulate the enemy's presence. CPK, the only person nearby, runs forward to place his heater and then immediately turns back. His teammate pleads him not to, insisting that the enemy will break the heater if it's left unguarded. "They can't," shouts CPK, who promptly gets frozen and learns that they can, in fact, break it. At this point, the rest of Cyan have arrived at the battle, but they are too late to oppose Orange's advance and ultimately pay the price for it. Just a few seconds after Orange and Cyan met, another fight began across the map. A fight which, thanks to that extra bit of time that passed beforehand, will play out very differently than the one we just saw. Cyan was still mining the last of the crates when Orange appeared, and despite having a player frozen early, they could have put up a good fight had they applied pressure rather than played passively. Purple, on the other hand, has finished mining crates and is returning to a tighter formation as they leave the low ground in the center. Enter Lime, whose timing is impeccable. They catch Purple with their backs turned and freeze 3 players before they can fire a single shot. Puns, the only player left unfrozen, is forced to retreat behind cover. He places his heater once he gathers his bearings, but Lime is putting up a masterclass in aggression and immediately breaks it. Their continued pushing forces him to abandon his frozen teammates and enter the neighboring room for safety. Although the fighting has stopped, the battle is far from over. Lime is well aware of this and continue their pursuit of Puns into the next room so they can finish what they started. But then they hesitate. They decide not to go any further, as doing so would risk allowing their target to sneak behind them and unfreeze his teammates. They return to the cash room instead, intending to guard their kills until the meltdown begins. But when they enter, they make a shocking discovery. They are not alone. Unlike some of the other teams we've seen, Pink was truly alone in their cash room. Red, their neighbor, had already been dealt with, and the middle spawning Lime went off to the right. There was no fighting to distract them after mining their crates. They entered the next room as soon as it opened, and money was still on their minds. It didn't take long for a brilliant idea to form. Go all the way to the other cash room and mine more coins. Their pupils turned to dollar signs as they hastily made their way over, but just as quickly as they came, a sudden realization stopped them in their tracks. They are not alone. According to a team's typical meltdown path, in which they travel from their spawn to the nearest cash room then progress to the center, neither team should be here. Both teams have already entered one of the 4 penultimate rooms, but Lime has doubled back to win a battle and Pink wants to double down on the coin crates. They enter the room at the same time and notice each other at the same time. They even notice each other the same way, with their straggling players glimpsing each other down the hallway. The leading players come face to face as well immediately after, potentially setting the stage for an epic 2-pronged battle. But the players aren't ready for that. They're still feeling out the game and they'd rather retreat to safety than try to be a hero. It's the right choice, but it'll make for a defensive battle that takes much more time to finish, and time is running out. The teams entered the room with roughly 2 minutes and 55 seconds left in the round. They're already in position to fight when at 2:44 a siren begins to sound. The room is melting down. Purple immediately alerts his teammates, but they don't share his sense of panic. They absolutely should, given that the ground they are standing on has turned black. All he can do is watch as the ground beneath their feet disintegrates and they plummet into the lava below. Wait, did you see that? No, not that. This. 7 people fell into lava in the span of about 2 seconds, and only one of them was frozen. Back over here, Aqua did the exact same thing as Pink, entering a second cash room for more coins and leaving with less manpower after another team's presence distracted them from the meltdown. And then there's Lime, who lost 2 players despite immediately trying to evacuate when the meltdown began. They nearly lost a third, with Scott getting frozen by Purple barely outside of the melting area. He's unfrozen in time to escape, but Lime are not out of the woods yet. The frozen purple pandas saw them re-enter the room and exchange shots with Pink. They relayed that info to Puns, who wants to re-enter himself as a third-party combatant. He spots a player in the doorway and shoots, and misses. So he shoots again, and misses again, and again, and again, and again. With his target turning a corner, he repositions to monitor the room's center. He once again spots his mark and shoots another volley of arrows that don't connect. Lime isn't even firing back. They are still in flight mode after escaping the meltdown in the previous room. All they want to do is make it to the door to the central room where they can gather their bearings. But Puns is not letting up. He repositions once again, running a wide route that leads him to the doorway right as Lime run through it. He follows them and finds himself in a position most players could only dream of. 2 opponents, both with their backs turned, out in the open as easy targets. He shoots at one, misses, and gets hit in return before he can shoot again. Although 6 teams made it to the penultimate rooms, the casualties suffered in the cash rooms left only 2 of them at full strength. Orange wisely disengaged from a brewing conflict when the meltdown began, and Yellow was lagging behind at that point, so they faced no resistance. But the calm won't last for long. Yellow has 2 options to progress: go north, where we saw the remainders of Lime and Purple, or go west, following the trail of Aqua. We already saw what happened up here, so only one option remains. Yellow will be facing Aqua for a spot in the central room. Teams meet head-on shortly after entering the room. Their leaders, who at this moment are Jojo and H-Bomb, exchange shots in surprise. Both miss, and then their instincts diverge. Jojo fully retreats, taking her eyes off of her opponents, whereas H-Bomb proceeds forward and takes another shot. He's rewarded with a hit, and thanks to Jojo's retreat, he has free rein to push forward and break the heaters. He doesn't do it in time, and ends up frozen himself when he finally does. But Yellow continued to retreat rather than pressing, and their new position creates a stalemate. Aqua has the high ground, preventing Yellow from easily breaking their heaters, but Yellow controls the shooting lane so Aqua can't pose much of a threat. And if the teams don't kill each other anytime soon, something else will. Even when you're looking for it, you can barely see it, but in the heat of the battle, against an opponent with a height advantage no less, Yellow never stood a chance. The meltdown claimed all 3 unfrozen players in one fell swoop, and broke their only heater for good measure. Yellow has definitively lost this battle. But Aqua hasn't yet won it. Aqua's task is simple: get to the central room, where they'll get a brief reprieve from the meltdown. They're handling the situation very calmly. Oh look, our opponents fell into lava. I guess we'd better get moving then. There's just one problem. They need to figure out where to get moving to. H-Bomb can't, because despite offhanding the map like a civilized Meltdown player, he can't see where he is due to the death messages in chat. Just as they disappear, Green pipes up. "Follow me," he exclaims, confidently running in the exact opposite direction he should be going. H-Bomb obliges, and although they quickly realize their mistake, it's already too late. The paths to the central room melt down right before they reach them, and they're ultimately forced to retreat to a different doorway as the floor decays around them. And as the last of the floor turns black, the round ends, with 44 seconds left on the clock. Why did that happen? Let's go back to the center room and see who actually made it there. We've got all of Orange, who had a pretty uneventful journey to the center after disposing of Cyan, as well as a solo player from Pink, another from Purple, and a duo from Lime. That's it. The stray survivors didn't stand a chance against a healthy Orange team, who found themselves alone in the center with a minute 16 left in the round. Over the next 30 seconds, they mined the final coin cache and scoured the room for their last opponents, whose fate, unbeknownst to Orange, was already sealed. Even if someone manages to find safety from the melting floor in a locked room, they will eventually be eliminated anyway as the melting finishes. That's what happened to Aqua. With 44 seconds remaining, the penultimate rooms finished melting, so their inhabitants got caught in a melting room. And since only one team remained and the central crates were mined, the round ended right then. That was quite the round. We saw 5 teams lose players to the Meltdown across 4 different rooms, with somehow none of those being the central room. 2 teams even had all 4 players die without kill credit, and across the board 16 players suffered this fate. Thanks to all of Orange surviving the round, the kill count was a measly 20, which stands today as the lowest number in any round of Meltdown. Low kills also means low points, and on today's points leaderboard this round can be found second to last. Now, this might not be all that surprising. The first playthrough of a game will obviously rank among the worst, so it isn't really fair to make this comparison. So let's do a different one. How does this stack up against the first time other games were played? We'll begin with survival games, which thanks to its simplicity will not look too bad here. The only environmental hazards are fall damage and the world border, and neither are very potent. Despite this, the first survival games had 4 deaths going credited. Naturally, I decided to look into how they occurred, and I was not prepared for what I would find. I'm gonna keep this short because I'm already on a tangent here, but here's the gist. In the first 4 MCCs, there was a bug that resulted in some kills not awarding coins. This occurred more than 15 times across survival games, Skyblockle, and Battlebox, including all 4 kills we see here. So for the purposes of this comparison, let's consider only deaths due to environmental causes, of which survival games has none. Okay, despite that, 0 is an underwhelming number. So let's up the ante a bit. Sky Battle, as the name suggests, takes place in the sky. Falling out of it is obviously a hazard, as is a faster border since it's a 3-round game. Even so, the increased threats only led to 3 environmental deaths in the first round of Sky Battle. Remember that even though plenty of players die to the void and the border, most of these are also thanks to getting hit by an opponent, so they won't count as environmental deaths. This makes Meltdown's number of 16 look even more absurd. That's how many players died while unfrozen. There is one other reason why Sky Battle put up such a low number. Even though it was a new game, it wasn't a new concept, but rather a game specifically designed to improve and replace another game, Skyblockle. We'll get to its debut a little later. In the meantime, let's check out another game in the sky, Rocket Spleef. As opposed to Rocket Spleef Rush, which is generally regarded as a movement game thanks to the stage progression, original Rocket Spleef was very much a PvP game. The completely static map meant that the only threat came from other players, and dying otherwise meant you made a mistake that was avoidable by going AFK. Nevertheless, 6 players died without kill credit in its first round. I honestly expected that number to be higher, since Rocket Spleef debuted in the very first MCC, and the overall skill level of early events was much lower than it is today. Battlebox, which was introduced in MCC2, showcases that perfectly. Its first ever map, which you may recognize from the old practice server, had plenty of lava, including a mandatory jump over it to reach the wool. And again, getting knocked into lava by an opponent does not count here. For a true environmental death, a player has to jump into the lava on their own. In the first round of Battlebox, this occurred 6 times. Knowing how Battlebox typically plays today, 6 is a stupidly high number. Aside from the map's return in MCC6, I don't think there have been 6 environmental deaths over a full game, and a game of BattleBox is 9 rounds. In fact, because it's 9 rounds, this number should be even higher when adjusted for comparison with the 3-round Meltdown. Including the 2nd and 3rd rounds bumps BattleBox up to 12, and as crazy as that is, it does not surpass Meltdown. I've saved the best for last, Skyblockle. Skyblockle has a well-deserved reputation as one of MCC's worst games thanks to it being a single-round PvP game with an 18-minute timer. It begins with players punching a tree and making a cobblestone generator, which isn't exactly exciting gameplay. It would really suck to fall off the map at this stage since you'd have to spectate for over 10 minutes, and in MCC1, 2 players did just that. This is looking like a very tame start, on pace for just 6 environmental deaths with a third of the game having passed, but at the 7-minute mark the pressure is increased, the border begins to shrink, and the players are not prepared.
Oh, Sasha,
get back over here, Sasha. I think it's also shrinking this way a bit, so I'm going to go this way.
Oh god. All
right. We probably should have kept the, probably should have built that cobblestone generator over here.
Oh god! It's still
going.
Oh
What?
It's still
oh god! Wait, what? What? Oh, okay, we're dead. Well, that's dumb.
8 players died in the border within a 10-second span, including a full team. That brings the death total up to 10, with the game's midpoint yet to be reached. Then a few minutes later, the border claims its 9th victim. A fall into the void a bit after that marks the 12th environmental death, then another 2 bring the total up to 14. But that's all she wrote. The remaining players all died in combat, leaving Skyblockle 2 deaths short of matching Meltdown. And thus, Meltdown takes the crown for having the worst first round of any game in MCC history. I think we should best get going now, since the second round's about to start. The players should have learned their lessons now, so who's ready to see some high quality gameplay? Nah, who am I kidding? Let the show continue. Round 2 begins the exact same way as the first, with a conflict at the doorway of a side room. Like Red the previous round, Green had no intention of rushing to the doorway and camping there. Unlike Red, however, this changed once they realized where they were positioned. They catch Purple unaware after spotting them around the corner, and convert their element of surprise to a 4-1 disadvantage. Purple, despite being caught in no state to battle, has quickly pushed their aggressors to the brink of defeat. All they have to do is break one heater and freeze one player, but they're just a little too slow. The tides begin to shift with a revival on Green and a freeze on Purple, and the ensuing close-range scrap ends with Green on top. Purple didn't necessarily put up a good fight, but it still stings to come so close to winning and end up eliminated with nothing to show for it. It's an aspect of Meltdown that many people dislike, although I think that the 3 rounds give teams plenty of opportunity to earn coins. Occasionally a team might not get what they deserve, so to speak, but I don't think this is a great sin of Meltdown, or even exclusive to it. And if you feel more strongly about this than I do, well, I have some good news for you. Another team was eliminated immediately after Purple, and they 100% deserved it. Sign begins the round with some players wanting to linger in the first room to grab coin crates. This is not a great idea, as we know today, but it's the first ever game, so I'll cut them some slack. What I will not cut them some slack for is the other players running ahead. Just 30 seconds into the round, Sign has players in 3 separate rooms, and look at the path they took. If the team that spawned here chose a fast game plan, they'd likely catch a few players and easily isolate them given how far they spread. Fortunately for Cyan, they didn't, but they continued their reckless movement instead of reconvening when they reached the cash room. CPK is still in great danger, and when he finally enters the cash room, he immediately gets shot. This image encapsulates the situation perfectly. Look at Red, look at how coordinated they are, moving as a unit and fighting together. Now look at Cyan. You can see the outline of one player in the distance, the other 2 aren't even on screen. CPK will not be unfrozen this round, none of Cyan will. They get picked off one by one as Red traverses the room, and for the second time in 2 rounds, their lack of coordination results in their downfall. It's that time of the round again. The coin caches are now accessible, so let's check up on everyone's position. Only 2 teams are out this time, so hopefully the coins will be more heavily contested. The ones down here aren't, as Green's still recovering from their battle against Purple. The ones up here also aren't now that Cyan has been defeated. They should be, since Red came from the middle spawn, meaning there should be a 3rd team in the mix, but that team is Orange, who are once again playing at a sluggish pace. Two teams that haven't been playing sluggishly are Aqua and Blue. Both arrived in their cache room a good 40 seconds prior to the crates unlocking, and they both located the crates shortly afterwards, but neither team tried to secure them. Aqua decided to monitor their doorway in case of another team showing up, and Blue were content with peeking behind walls rather than entering the open center. When the two defensively minded teams encountered one another, their battle was anything but legendary. They exchanged shots down a hallway that was too long for any freezes to come to fruition, and then they went their separate ways. The ultimate winner of this battle was Blue, not because of their fighting, but because Tubbo grabbed the coin crates while Aqua wasn't looking. That makes 8 coin caches we've seen mined today, and not once did the miner face any pressure. The 9th looks to be headed in the same direction, as Yellow's roundabout pathing has made Lime the sole occupant of the cache room as it unlocks. They aren't taking advantage though. Just like Aqua, they're opting to stick to the room's outskirts and monitor the doorways. They could be mining a free cache right now, but if they keep this up, Yellow will show up and they'll get the freebie instead. And with 3:21 on the clock, 24 seconds after the crates got unlocked, in comes Yellow. Yellow enters from the doorway that Lime is not holding. This means they won't immediately encounter Lime and they could potentially steal the crates from right under Lime's noses. But the moment they enter, Jimmy notices that the crates are available. All of a sudden, the two teams are on a collision course with just 10 seconds of leeway. This should benefit Lime, who has eyes on the crates, but just as Jimmy noticed them, Scott accidentally claimed the pickaxe, initiating a cooldown before it could be reclaimed. The cooldown's length? 10 seconds. Lime is set to begin mining the moment Yellow shows up at the scene. And here they come. Quig spots them through the glass as they arrive, but Jimmy still goes for the coins despite the alarm being raised. He only mines 3 crates before being frozen. Quig jumps down from his bridge, on which he was safe from Yellow's shots at the cost of being unable to hit them either. Unfortunately for him, this simplification puts the battle squarely in Yellow's favor. Since Yellow is fighting from a choke point, their proximity to each other is helping to defend their heaters and unfreeze themselves faster. Lime, in contrast, is spread out around an open area, with players and heaters alike ripe for Yellow's picking. Thanks to Jimmy getting frozen off the bat, they never had much of a shot. With one swift push, Lime falls to the hands of Yellow. I think it's safe to say that Yellow got a bit lucky there. Not lucky to win the fight necessarily, but to arrive at the perfect time, when Lime's shields were lowered but they hadn't yet mined the coin crates. Their luck is about to run out though. As they mine the remaining crates, the room begins to melt and the area right next to them is the first to go. They're forced to make a quick decision, and in their panic, the group runs in the wrong direction. Fortunately for them, a doorway is still nearby, and Jojo's leadership gets them there in the nick of time. Well, 2 of them. An expanding hole that herself and Sylvie managed to cross was too big by the time the others got there. So Yellow proceeds into the next room as a duo, and the first thing they see upon entering is another team. A full team of 4 players who have just been frozen. We're gonna have to rewind a bit here. Green, after defeating Purple early in the round, went north instead of westward where the coin cache was. This left the coin cache entirely to Pink, who upon mining it also went north. Since Green then has to go inward, the 2 teams are forced to share a room, and this one in particular is pretty unique. Thanks to the walls being almost entirely made of glass, this room has near perfect visibility, so when the 2 teams enter, they immediately notice each other. Pink is closer to the door to the center, and they quickly take note of that, forcing Green to approach them if they want to get by. And Green is more than happy to oblige. They push up halfway to open a shooting lane on Pink, but shooting lanes go both ways, and Pink is the first to capitalize. Now Pink pushes up to Green, but they unfreeze just in time. This shootout has become a melee, and it's looking quite familiar. This is Green's second battle of the round. Second battle of their game in fact, as they didn't get very far in round 1. It's the second battle in which they decide to initiate the fight, and the second battle in which it immediately backfires as they have players frozen early. And for the second time, this battle has become a short-range brawl fought around a small barrier. Green has done this all before, and in the exact same position no less, but here things begin to diverge. Purple's push was uncoordinated, so even with limited manpower, Green was able to fend them off and eventually take the advantage themselves. In this battle, however, Green's at full power. They thawed their players just in time with Pink's arrival, but Pink is no Purple. They are unified in aggression, and Green gets swarmed. Pink is on both sides of their position, and in the middle of it too. The entire Green team gets frozen in under 2 seconds. This is what Yellow saw as they entered the room. A full team one moment, and a field of ice the next. They won't have to worry about fighting Green, of course, but Pink is still here, and there's only one doorway to mid. Do you want to know what's worse than 2 teams sharing one doorway? Well, you're about to find out because Orange has spotted Pink from the center room. Here's the situation now. The room has started melting, but pink is being held back by orange. Neither of them know yellow is also here, but yellow has no intention of joining a fight with just 2 players alive. They just want to sneak behind pink into the center, but they're oblivious to the presence of orange. As yellow awaits an opening, pink is forced to cut themselves down to 2 players, as Sparkles and Ollie are too far away to be rescued under orange's pressure. Then finally, relief. Noticing blue from across them in the central room, orange wisely decides to abort the door camp for their safety. When the remainder of pink slips by, orange diverts their attention elsewhere, but in comes yellow behind them. Orange gets caught from behind, getting 2 players frozen and their heaters broken. If yellow were at full strength, they'd likely be well on their way to winning this battle. Duos can be a bit fragile though, and as quickly as they froze half of orange, the other half freezes them. With no heaters pre-placed, this marks the end of yellow's journey. A similar fate befalls pink shortly afterward, whose remaining players get killed by a full quartet in blue. The eliminations of yellow and pink leave just 2 teams in the central room, a number that feels a bit low. It's not absurd, as it could be a result of natural pathing, assuming everyone who shares a room fights to completion. But we've seen a bit of timid play this round, particularly in the western half of the map where... Ah, there you are. Why aren't any of you in the center? Red and Aqua encountered each other the moment the latter entered the room. As is tradition for teams on this side of the map, they chose to part ways rather than fight. But they can't play this game forever. Aqua spotted Red from a few points now, and they know something has to be done. This room isn't big enough for the both of them. Aqua prepares an attack, and Red elects to hold their ground. Let the battle begin. This is actually quite an awkward position for a fight. Aqua has the high ground, but it's a hallway that's separated from Red's more open area by a ladder. Aqua could have a tough time making progress since they'd need to get through the bottleneck that all of Red have eyes on in order to break their heaters, but Red likely has it worse. If they want to break Aqua's heaters, they'll need to go up the ladder and expose themselves to everyone up there. Even hitting Aqua will be hard enough, as if they retreat down the hallway, Red will struggle to shoot them. Red doesn't need to pursue though. They're the ones closest to the door, which is already open, so they can make for the central room anytime they please. They don't. They're just taking shots, and they're hitting shots. They're going up the ladder and into Aqua's position. 3 of Aqua are frozen and 3 of Red are on the attack. And their 4th? Well, he's frozen. Actually no, he's not frozen anymore. Because he just fell into lava. Alarm bells should be ringing in someone's head. Sam was positioned almost directly between Aqua's ground and the door, which means Red's escape route is likely melting away at this very moment. Yet nobody registers this in their heads. They're focused on offense. Not focused enough on offense though, because they're failing to do the most important part of a push, breaking heaters. Aqua is allowed an unfreeze, and suddenly Red find themselves with opponents both in front of them and behind. And to put the cherry on top, the ground they just took is beginning to melt away. Red, who was in a dominant position mere seconds ago, quickly succumbs to the mess they've fallen into. This renders Aqua the winner of this battle, but I'm putting that in quotation marks because they're not going to make it either. By the time they're all unfrozen, they've been confined to a tiny segment of floor beside the wrong doorway for progression. They're given one final spark when they learn they can climb on top of the map by jumping on their heaters, but it's too late to save them. The floor has melted too much, leaving the door to the center inaccessible. Just like last round, Aqua gets eliminated by the full meltdown of the penultimate room. Only this time, the round doesn't end, because in the central room, Orange has company. Orange and Blue both have all 4 players alive, marking the first time multiple teams have made it to the center in this state. They've also knocked out all the remaining partial teams, so all that remain are the 2 teams and a coin cache that's about to go up for grabs. When it opens, Blue pounces on it and begins mining, while Orange doesn't even have eyes on it. Orange is still recovering from their door camp, so they have some teammates to unfreeze before they join another fight. They do manage to provide a bit of resistance, but at this point Blue has already mined most of the crates and has a firm grasp on the center. With Blue taking the crates, only one goal remains: survival. And in this regard, the advantage goes to Orange. The central room is made up of a 2-floor ring around the coin cache platform in the middle, and Orange holds the top floor. As the floors melt away, Orange will receive openings to the bottom floor to shoot downwards at Blue, or even jump down if the top floor melts too much. Blue won't get these luxuries on the bottom floor. If their area shrinks too much, all they can do is accept that their fate is sealed. Predictably, Orange wins this fight, and thus their second straight round of Meltdown as well. Technically speaking, the winners of a round of Meltdown are the teams that survive the round, as is denoted by the in-game chat. But winner carries an implication. It implies that a team performed better than all the others, and that's not necessarily the case. Take Orange's performance this round. If I were to show you every score from the past 2 rounds, would you be able to pick it out of the lineup? Chances are you wouldn't, because it's this one tied for 5th out of 20. And Orange's previous round, is that the best performance here? Also no. It's definitely better, but it's still only the 2nd best we've seen. Now I might sound a bit harsh here, because 2nd and 5th still sound pretty good, but we've yet to see the full picture. Let's return to the present day for a moment. It's time to bring out the big guns. Here are the scores of every team to ever earn the first place bonus in a round of Meltdown. Here's the mean, here's the median, and here are Orange's performances. The better of the two is below average, and the other is downright terrible. At just 460 coins, it lies twice as close to the average of all Meltdown rounds than it does to the average first place round. Why did Orange put up such weak numbers despite seemingly dominant wins? The answer is glaringly obvious. Coin crates. Orange, in case you didn't remember, were slow to the first cash room in both rounds, appearing only after another team had mined the coins. They did get to the central room on time, but even there they weren't great. In round 1 they got the final cash by default as they were the only remaining team in the center, but in round 2 they had opposition, so once again missed out on the coins. The team that took those coins, Blue, actually put up the best performance of the first 2 rounds because of them. They had fewer kills than Orange did in either round, and their team placement was obviously worse as well. But they mined 2 whole coin caches, twice the amount Orange did in both rounds combined. Coin caches are clearly a big deal then, so let's see exactly how important they are. Coin crates are worth 10 coins each when mined. Coin caches are composed of 18 crates and are therefore worth 180 coins. A single cache is worth more than 7 kills and is equal to the difference between the 1st and 10th place team bonuses. The Orange Ocelots passed this up in both rounds, handing it to another team for free. This is some awful play. I don't care that they went on to win both rounds, or that if they fought for the coins they may have had worse chances of doing so. I think giving up the caches is simply unjustifiable. Let me explain. If a team decides to fight for a coin cache, there are 3 main outcomes. They lose the fight and don't get the coins, they win the fight and get the coins, or they get the coins without having to fight for them. If a team plays slowly like Orange, however, they're probably getting one specific outcome. No coin cache, and their first fight will be deferred to later in the round. When a team intentionally does this, it likely means that they're trying to avoid one situation in particular: no cache and early death. If that is your only goal in a game of Meltdown, then sure, by all means play like that, but like every other MCC game barring Dodgeball, Meltdown already has a well-defined goal: to earn coins, and that is the context I'll be using to evaluate things. Of course, coin-wise you also don't want to end up here, but let's look at what slow play offers. If you play slowly and die in your first fight, the only difference between your score and a team that died by a cache is that your team bonus will be marginally better. This won't be worth much though, likely around only 60 coins. And if you play slowly and win your first fight, well, good for you, but you don't get to compare that to a losing scenario. The alternative to that is winning the fight and mining the coins, which is worth 180 coins more than only winning a fight. Based on this alone, no team expecting to win even 25% of their fight should surrender a coin cache. But the numbers get even worse. We have yet to factor in the third case for cache competing: no fight whatsoever. This is not reliable, but occasionally happens if 2 teams fight prior to entering the cache room while a third mines it, or also if another team plays slowly. Since the end result is mining the cache and avoiding conflict, it's functionally the same as slow play, except with an extra 180 coins from the cache. That makes 2 of the 3 outcomes favoring cache play, and by a margin 3 times as high as the one that doesn't. Now this is an oversimplification, I will admit, as the reality of Meltdown is much less orderly than any theoretical situation. But as ugly as things can get, one thing remains constant. There are 180 coins ripe for the taking, and taking them is what good teams do. Orange had the numbers. Everyone did. The scoring was added to the official website prior to the event, and Pizza Hut reviewed it on stream. He doesn't have to do all this analyzing. I wouldn't expect it of anyone. It just takes the smallest bit of math though. All he needs to do is realize that 18 coin crates is a pretty big deal. Maybe he does, although he certainly doesn't play like it. Many teams don't, so this isn't an issue specific to Orange. Even today we see teams forego caches without trying to compensate in the kill department. And at least Orange was able to win some rounds and put up a good score. Many of these teams end up at the bottom in a game with one of the harshest point spreads in the event. Speaking of the bottom, that's currently occupied by Cyan. They have the exact opposite problem as Orange. They are playing very fast and very reckless. They've died in the first cache room twice now because they were too split up to unfreeze each other. The cache they mined in round 1 is the only bright spot in their event thus far, accounting for over half their current score. Ironically, it was Orange's sluggishness that allowed them to take it. Cyan doesn't plan on slowing down though. In fact, they're going faster than they can read their maps and end up in the wrong room. Here CPK gets an idea. Cyan can follow the path of the team that spawned above them and attack them from behind. For the first time this game, Cyan is moving in coordination. Someone's going to bear the brunt of an all-out attack from the wrong direction. That someone is Yellow. Yellow is in disarray. Somehow they've got nearly double Cyan's score, but they have just as many issues. Cyan's problems came from lack of leadership or a plan. Now that they have a plan, they're set up for success. Yellow does not have a plan. They have two. Sylvie wants to play quickly and reach the cache room in time to mine the crates the moment they unlock. Jojo, on the other hand, wants to take things more slowly, staying cautious of a potential encounter. They were arguing their cases back in round 1, and while they appear to have come to an agreement by the end of round 2, they clearly still have differing thoughts on how their final round should go. Their ultimate compromise between aggression and caution does not exist. Sylvie has proceeded to the cache room while her teammates are still exploring the room prior. She calls them to come join her. Jojo calls her to come back. She doesn't. She waits at the doorway. She knows she's safe. There's no one in her sight. There's no one in her teammates' sights either. As Jojo's group finishes their expedition, Sylvie turns around once more, and before she can even process what she sees, she's frozen. All of Cyan have appeared in the doorway. Cyan's offensive is going great. Sylvie never saw it coming, and now they're entering the cache room to hunt down her teammates. But they aren't in the cache room. The rest of Yellow is directly behind them. Cyan, in a matter of seconds, has gone from preparing a sneak attack to serving themselves up on a silver platter. The biggest beneficiary is Jojo, who's rewarded for her slow play with the easiest ace of her life. Despite being caught off guard, Yellow actually was expecting a team to show up. They knew there was a chance they'd face the team from the middle spawn, and Jojo made a point to keep a close eye on this doorway. Cyan slipped by because they came from the other side, and Yellow was not prepared for their unconventional pathing. They may not have even realized where exactly Cyan came from. They were expecting a team to come from the middle spawn, and maybe, or dare I say probably, connected the wrong dots and assumed Cyan was the team they were looking for. Regardless of what they were thinking, their guard definitely came down after the battle as they turned their attention to the cache room. In the entrance to the cache room, Yellow is faced with a simple choice: proceed left or right. They choose both. Jojo and Sylvie go one way, Blushy the other, and G picks option C, turn around and go back into the previous room. She doesn't get very far, not because she realizes she's gone the wrong way, but because she runs straight into another team. The team from the middle spawn. Lime spotted a heater near the doorway, so they know to expect a fight sometime soon, but they're still nearly as surprised as G is when they come face to face. They're not fazed in the slightest though, pursuing her as she runs back to her teammates and forcing a solo Blushy to do the same. They'd like to push further, but they find themselves in an awkwardly shaped hallway that Yellow takes advantage of. Lime's advance is halted with a pair of freezes, allowing their opponents to escape and regroup deeper into the room. The battle has been put on hold, but it's not over, and both teams are well aware of that. Yellow makes good use of the break, finding the room's coin cache and taking it before Lime can re-enter the picture. They only barely had the time. Lime showed up as they were finishing to take a few shots, and as they regrouped, they're aware the fight could rekindle at any moment. Sure enough, Lime shows up and Jojo sounds the alarm. But Jojo's not looking at Lime. She's looking in the exact opposite direction. Purple began their round with an astute observation. They're in the position Green was last round when they got door camped by them. This round, Puns decides, Purple will be doing the camping. He notes that it's probably a good idea to get there quickly, paying minimal attention to the coin crates scattered around the first room. He then proceeds to go out of his way for coin crates and takes nearly 30 seconds to reach the next room. As he takes position at the side spawn's door, his teammates notice another team on the other side of the room. I wonder how they got here. Puns might be wondering as well, but he does at least realize he's too late when he notices the room is melting. The team then goes north instead of west towards the nearest cache room, and Puns describes his new plan. Go to the next closest cache room and catch a team there off guard. As he speaks, he looks directly at the doorway to the next room, but then turns away. The very next thing to come out of his mouth.
How do I get up there?
Oh.
We have to go.
I just got scared by the heater.
I don't know how to get up.
Door eventually.
The way they eventually get up there is through a more central room, which due to its late unlocking renders them unable to contest the cache. They do achieve their other goal though. They caught Yellow in a very compromising position. The third-party attack is one of the most hated aspects of not just Meltdown, but any game in the Minecraft event sphere. It's a situation even the strongest players must stay aware of, as anyone can be a victim. Here's how it goes. Two teams are engaged in a fight. As the battle progresses, players lose health across the board and some may die. Then, when the teams are weakened, a third, fully healthy team swoops in to kill the others and take the valuable kill points for themselves. Both of the initial fighters lose, and the third party wins. At least, that's what happens in a typical PvP game. But as we established earlier, Meltdown is not typical. The most important difference between Meltdown and other PvP games is the combat system. The one-shot bows and heaters make for very boomer-bust fights, as most result in one team dying completely and the other coming out unharmed. This makes a third-party attack more difficult, as they have a limited time to strike. As soon as a team is fully unfrozen, they aren't a cleanup job but rather an equal foe. It's hard to be a third party if the second makes no impact. If you are even the slightest bit familiar with this game, you've probably got a comment half-typed already. It's easy to be a third party in Meltdown. It happens all the time. Look at the map. There are 10 teams crammed into a grid that fits 8. The third party scenario is destined, by geometry. That is what counteracts the combat system and keeps third parties in Meltdown. And it doesn't just counteract it, it tips the scales hard in the other direction. Meltdown has a reputation as the game of third parties, where your fate is out of your control. I am an unapologetic Meltdown defender, and I don't think its reputation is entirely fair, but I definitely see where it comes from. Third parties in Meltdown can be brutal. Unlike most Battle Royale style PvP games, Meltdown is played on a very enclosed battlefield. Unless you're looking through a doorway, you cannot see from room to room, and even within rooms, lines of sight are typically quite short. This allows for a new type of third-party threat to emerge, the pincer. A team can find themselves surrounded with opponents on both sides, and by the time they realize it, their fate is already sealed. That's why Meltdown gained its reputation. You cannot react to a third party entering, so it feels like you have no agency. As if in some rounds, your death is predetermined and there's nothing you can do to stop it. Here's the thing, you can stop it, you just need a change of mindset. In other games, you can look around before entering a fight, and if a third team is nearby, you can just call it off. That is playing reactively, and it's a skill many top PvPers are quite proficient at. However, as I just said, this doesn't work in Meltdown. Playing it like you would play any other game is like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. And if the square peg is being reactive, then what is the round peg? Being proactive. The moment the round begins, every action you take can affect your odds of survival later down the line, including, of course, your odds of getting pinched. So let's find out what Yellow could have done differently. When Yellow noticed the arrival of Purple, they weren't even engaged with Lime. 6 seconds later, all 4 of Yellow are frozen and their heaters destroyed. I don't think there's anything they could have done in those 6 seconds, aside from maybe a player or two ditching their teammates and carrying on alone. Their key decision came over 30 seconds prior to getting pinched. During the first shootout with Lime, Yellow froze 2 players in quick succession, while they themselves had 3 actionable players and a 4th soon to be. Plenty of teams would have pushed in this position, potentially putting Lime to rest right there and then. But Yellow backed off. This isn't necessarily a bad decision, as it guaranteed them the coin crate since they were deeper into the room than their opponents. It does put them at a greater risk should the fight continue though. If it were to happen in this room, the Meltdown could cost them lives, and if they went to the next room they'd need to hope Lime wouldn't follow. Even if Yellow camped the door, they would still be occupying a room that's likely to host another team under normal pathing. So while Purple's unorthodox route was ultimately their downfall, they were not all that safe under normal conditions either. Nowadays it's become trendy to play somewhat like Purple did. Intentionally avoid the nearest cache room and enter a different one hoping to catch its occupants off guard. It's a simple philosophy, rather be the third party than get third partied, though it's not as good as it sounds. The third party in Meltdown is one end of a sandwich, which is much better than being in the middle, but they still have an equal power on the other end. It's not a full-on clean like it is in other PvP games, but I think some people may still have those expectations. Time to squash them. The 2 teams making up the bread of the yellow sandwich did not split the rewards evenly. The kill count was 3-1 in favor of Lime, and that's not even the worst of it. JoJo was able to land 2 hits on Purple before getting frozen herself, but her teammates didn't touch Lime whatsoever. Lime was completely free to push into Yellow's position, and when they saw the state of Purple they just kept going. When all was said and done, Purple did worse than even Yellow, who had 2 kills to Purple's 1. And it doesn't end there. Purple went out of their way to get here, passing up on the nearest coin cache. Yellow, meanwhile, mined the one here prior to dying. That makes for a 200 coin difference in Yellow's favor. Then of course there's Lime, whose 5 kills haven't quite caught them up to Yellow's score, but as the sole survivors of the battle they have a good chance of getting there. So there we have it. The definitive loser of this battle is the third party. That'll be it for third parties this round, at least until teams reach the central room. We're even lacking second parties again, with Blue and Pink enjoying caches all to themselves. It's a bit more excusable this time. Purple went for a more experimental approach, and the other 2 teams down south got into a fight that quickly turned messy. Aqua had the element of surprise for longer than they should have thanks to a lapse of awareness by Sapnap, but they could only convert it to a single freeze before Green turned the tables. 3 of Aqua were frozen, and False, their 4th, was already in the cache room, fully unaware of how aggressively her teammates were playing until it was far too late to save them. Now solo, she decides to run as far away as possible, and she'll make it halfway around the map before being caught. Despite winning the battle, Green is not sitting pretty. The coin cache is unlocked as the fight was just beginning, so obviously they can't get that, but they have a bigger problem. Also during the fight, the room they're in began melting down. Fortunately for them, they disposed of Aqua very quickly, but they're not out of the woods yet. The team looks to Sapnap to lead them to safety, and lead them he does, without looking at his map. If you're getting flashbacks to Green first round, I do not blame you. It's looking like a repeat could very well happen. But then, Sapnap spots a doorway. The path toward it is still intact. He makes his way forward. Some nearby floor begins to blacken, but it's not enough to stop him. He steps into the doorway, and his dreams of a safe and stable room are shattered. All that remains of the room in front of him is the lava at the bottom. Sapnap's in disbelief. He has no idea what to do now. He looks back at the room he wanted to leave, then again to where he was headed. Where he doesn't look is the most important direction right now, that being up. Sapnap, along with Michael who joined his side, has found a new way to die, getting squashed by a door. Green is now reduced to just Foolish and Tina, who still have to find a way out of their melting room. Which they do, quite easily, because Foolish read his map. Good job, Foolish. Now that that's out of the way, there's 2 teams we have yet to cover, Red and Orange. Orange took their sweet time getting to the cache room in the prior 2 rounds, arriving after the cache was mined in both rounds. This round, I am proud to inform you that Orange reached the cache room before the crates unlocked. By a fraction of a second. Pete's the first of Orange to enter the room, and he does so with 3:45 left on the clock. When it hits 3:44, the crates unlock. If there's a team in this room, they could start mining the crates right now before Orange can reach them. And there is a team in this room. But they aren't mining the coins. Rather, at this very moment, they are launching an attack on Orange. Red lands a hit on Pete right off the bat, but as Dream pushes forward to try breaking heaters, Orange gets a huge retaliatory freeze on him. The battle shifts in Orange's favor as Pete thaws and breaks Red's heaters. Orange gets a second freeze, and now they're outright dominating. They have full control over the shooting lane, and they take advantage of it with a third freeze when Sam makes a desperation play to heat his teammates. With their full team up in Red's position, Orange should be bringing this fight to a close. But nobody breaks the Red heaters. Dream, who was already partially thawed thanks to earlier heaters, is the first to unfreeze, and when he does, all hell breaks loose. Dream immediately rushes forward to break Orange's heaters. He's already behind all of Orange at this point, but for some reason he just keeps running and gets refrozen before he can turn back around. Despite not getting any freezes, he served a very important role. Not only did he ensure Pete stays frozen by breaking Orange's heaters, but he also provided enough of a distraction for his teammates to thaw and re-enter the fight. Sam runs towards Dream, but he's unable to get his heater down before trading hits with Spifey. This leaves the battle in a 2v2 situation which is narrowly won by Red, giving Orange their first taste of elimination this whole event. This is just about an ideal scenario for the Red Rabbits. They've won their first fight of the round, and they even mined the coin cache while doing so. We already know that they won't be facing any additional pressure in this room, so once they get unfrozen they can just enjoy a small break from fighting. So how's the unfreezing coming along?
It's just us. It's just
I can't unfreeze you. I can't unfreeze you.
Hurry! It's melting down. It's melting down, George.
I'm trying.
Do it.
I can't use it.
Right click. Get out of here! Get out of here! Get out! Get out! Get out! Get out! Get out! Get out! You're gonna get stuck.
Just place it.
Yeah, George, if you run back.
I don't know.
Oh god.
Remember when Dream kept running forward after breaking Orange's heaters? Well, he ran through a doorway and into a room that had already begun melting. Sam then followed to try and save him, but failed, so then both of them were stuck there until the battle was over. And at that point, it was just a little too late. One minor mistake ended up costing the lives of over half the team, despite the battle in which it occurred having already ended. That's Meltdown for ya. In the first round, only one full team made it to the central room. 2 full teams did so in the second round, and this trend continues in the third as Lime, Pink, and Blue have all gotten here at full strength. Joining them are duos from Red and Green, putting the room's total population at 16 across 5 unique teams. The fighting starts before all the teams even enter, as Pink was already aware of Green's presence in the previous room, so they decided to camp the doorway after entering. Their opponent isn't Green though. They set up camp in direct view of Blue, who promptly launched the most devastating attack in the history of the game. This is not intended to be a surprise attack. Pink is aware of Blue's presence, and that combined with the threat of Green's arrival has led them to retreating into a corner, holding angles on the choke points on both sides. What Pink is not aware of is that Blue has a second angle of attack. They don't have to use the corridor where they were spotted by Pink. Just to the left, there's a staircase up to a smaller tunnel that leads them directly above Pink's position. Shooting fish in a barrel has never been more apt of a comparison. Tubbo takes 4 shots with 4 freezes in just 3 seconds. It's the fastest ace in Meltdown history. Or at least it would be if he had broken the heaters to finish the job. Instead, he just turns around and all his efforts go to waste. With the element of surprise now blown, Blue is forced to take a more fair fight against Pink. The teams exchange freezes, but Pink is quick to thaw and they begin retreating from their position. It's a good thing they did, because now's when Green shows up. They too get some hits in on Pink, but the numbers disadvantage is too much to make up and they're quickly laid to rest. Across the room, Red is the next team to fall when they get flanked by Lime, leaving only the 3 teams of 4 alive. The crates unlock and the room begins to melt, thus commencing the round's endgame. Pink appears to be the least likely team to win here as their position is really not great. They're caught on the low ground in between Blue and Lime, and while neither team is applying much pressure, Pink can't apply much themselves. The best thing they can play for here is the coin cache in the center, and Tommy does, grabbing about half before he's frozen. Unfortunately for him, his teammates were not supporting him in the center, but rather trying to fight Lime from the bottom of a large staircase. They all get frozen in short order, not just by Lime but also a sneaky shot from Blue across the map. Lime has been playing a very conservative game in the central room. They haven't applied any pressure to the coin cache, so once Pink went down, Blue was free to grab the rest of it. Blue then leaves the center since it's very exposed and returns to their previous position up high. Now both teams have strong defensive positions and they're across the room from each other, meaning they will not be breaking each other's heaters. The final battle in the first ever Meltdown is essentially a coin flip. Whoever's platform melts first loses. Both teams get some hits in, then place their heaters to undo each other's progress. It works out for Lime, but Blue's area is melting down rapidly. Their heaters come down just a bit too late, so one player falls. Then a second. Then a third becomes a sitting duck after being stranded on a tiny island. Only Tapple remains as the last of Blue's land disintegrates, but there's a glimmer of hope. He retreats to a doorway and stands on a ledge that's unable to melt. At this point, he's essentially playing dodgebolt in the doorway. He has to dodge 4 players with as many arrows as they please for 10 whole seconds. This sounds impossibly tough, but there's one more factor in this equation: a wall. It's one of the few things in the room that isn't melting down, and it's just large enough to block all shots towards Tapple that aren't aimed at his feet. 10 seconds might be enough for one of the 4 shooters to thread the needle, but they have their own problem. Their platform is shrinking fast. Lime has to divide their attention between shooting and staying on stable ground, and the latter is getting harder and harder. The platform shrinks and shrinks, then the whole thing turns black, and the round ends. All 5 players survive. Lime barely avoids getting cheesed out of a surefire victory, and Blue holds on long enough to share it. And the reward for Tapple's heroics is 0 coins. For some reason, unlike every other game which sees multiple survivors share the first place bonus, Meltdown awards the lowest available bonus instead. So Lime and Blue were both awarded the second place team bonus, meaning all he accomplished was preventing Lime from earning 20 coins. I wish I could say those 20 coins were important in some way, but they would make no meaningful difference whatsoever. The only consequence of Tapple's last stand is a permanent quirk in the history books. there will always be one more second place team and one fewer first place team than the number of total Meltdown rounds played. A situation like this will never happen again. The very next event, the unmeltable ledges on the doorways were fixed, and in future seasons overtime would be implemented to ensure that only one team can survive a round of Meltdown. Meltdown has never undergone any major changes in its lifetime, barring the one-time appearance of the Nether map in Ender Cup. The main difference between Meltdown of MCC 22 and the Meltdowns of today is the gameplay. The meta has developed a lot over its nearly 3-year history, and I believe there's still plenty more development to come. The team that most resembled a modern team, in my opinion, is Blue. They understood the value of coin caches very well, mining at least 36 crates in 2 separate rounds. As a result, they came out of the game with not just the highest scoring round, but also a second of only 3 performances to hit 600 coins. They didn't end up winning the overall game though, and that ultimately came down to their fighting. They only got 2 kills in each of their high point rounds, and all of them came in the chaos of the central room. Both times they found themselves in a simple team versus team battle, they wound up losing, including a disappointing round 1. They were quite fortunate that not many teams realized the benefits of showing up early to a cache room, as they were able to mine their first cache in rounds 2 and 3 before their first fight. The team most opposite to Blue was Lime. Lime were the best fighters of the event, showing a level of aggression that would hold up very well even today. Oddly, they did not show the same aggression when traveling between rooms, playing at a pace nearly as slow as Orange's. This ended up costing them dearly, as they didn't mine a single cache throughout the entire game. So despite having the most kills of any team, Lime only placed 5th overall. I'd like to talk about Quig, the leader of Lime. People often debate how well some retired players would do in today's MCC, and one topic I'm particularly curious about is how well Quig would do in Modern Meltdown. He would go on to play one more event, where his team would use a Game 8 Meltdown to leapfrog into Dodgebolt, earning him a win to go alongside one final first individual performance. Aside from the poetic send-off, the highlight of his event was the Meltdown that made it all happen. Quig's team not only improved upon Lime 22's kill count, but also played an excellent cache game, securing at least 1 in every round. By the end of round 2, they had already outscored the best team from the previous event, and although the round 3 wasn't great, it was still enough to ensure that Quig retired with the best team in Meltdown. Other records he retired with include the best individual performance, the 2 best single rounds in terms of coins, and the 3 best in terms of kills. He also secured an impressive 50% survival rate. I'd contend he was the best Meltdown player in the event at the time, and I can't help but wonder if he'd have a claim to that title today had he kept playing. The ultimate winners of the first ever Meltdown were the Pink Parrots. The results weren't super flashy, never reaching even the final 2 teams alive in a round, but they were consistent in a way no other team was. The MCC community tends to appreciate moments of dominance over consistent performances, but consistency is a form of dominance in its own right, and Pink provided an incredible example. Here's every team's lowest scoring round this game. They range from bad to atrocious, with the highest of the bunch coming in at 265. Keep in mind that the average round score is about 335, a good bit more than that number. Pink's worst round was 460 coins, nearly double the next highest score. In a ranking of the game's 30 single round performances, all 3 of Pink's appear in the top 10. How did they do it? They were the only team to play well in all facets of the game. They were the only team to mine a cache in every round, the only team to reach the central room in every round, and one of 3 teams to earn at least 1 kill in every round. That is dominance through consistency. The first ever Meltdown featured a lot of low quality gameplay. There's no getting around that. If you were to call it the worst Meltdown ever, I and many others would probably agree. And yet, I love it. The first time any game is played is always special, and Meltdown in particular feels even more so. From the feeling of wonder when watching it live, to the post-event VOD reviews trying to figure out basic strategy, then years later reflecting on it with the knowledge of the modern meta, I think Meltdown of MCC 22 has brought me the most joy of any MCC game ever played. And perhaps now, it also has for you. I'd like to thank the MCC community for creating the wonderful resources that made this video possible, which will be linked in the description below. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it, I'd appreciate it if you like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.